Yeah. Hey, everybody, let's hear it for Charlie Kirk. Come on. How you doing, bro?
Good. Thanks for having me. Hey, everybody.
So excited to have you here. If you guys don't know who Charlie is, I'm sure most of you do. He is a political commentator. He started one of the largest college groups in all of America. I'm sure I'm not saying it right, all of your credentials, but tell us a little bit about the group that you started.
Yeah, we're actually headquartered here in Phoenix, Arizona. I'm originally from Chicago, Illinois. We've known each other for years.
That's right.
And I started this organization when I was 18 years old. I'm 26 now. Never went to college, which we could get into. Highly recommend it. Half kidding. But all kidding aside, yeah, we're on 2,000 high school and college campuses now across the country. Really active, kind of fighting for first principles, free markets, and I also have a project at Liberty University, which is a great school, kind of talking about the gospel of Jesus Christ and the intersection of that philosophy and those ideas with first principles and the ideas of freedom and liberty. So, but honored to be here. I love speaking to students and young people, and so thanks for having me.
And most people know, Charlie, that you have a lot of thoughts politically, but I don't know if everyone knows, you are very outspoken about your faith, but I know Charlie on a personal level, and he just loves the Lord. And I think it's so exciting and inspiring to see people who have been successful in the world, but that has not hindered or diminished their faith in any way. What's it like to live as a Christian in the public eye? What are the difficulties there?
Well, it's really hard. And I mean, everyone here who's a Christian or searching to be a Christian, I'm not gonna sugarcoat it. I mean, it's one of the hardest things you can believe in. Actually, it is the hardest thing you could believe in this culture, in this time, in this society. You'll lose friends. You'll get in arguments with family members. You'll have people comment on your posts saying you're misguided, you're confused. All of you, I'm sure, can relate to that once or twice. But nothing's more important than your salvation in Jesus Christ. And don't complain about it. Embrace it. And that's one of the things, the messages I want to bring to everyone here is, no one wants to hear about your problems except maybe your mother. Social media, and I could get into the whole thing about social media, but if you're using social media to express to other people to try to get sympathy, that's wrong. Don't do that. Nobody cares about what sort of challenge you're going through except you and your relationship with Jesus Christ. Don't blame other people for what other obstacle you might have.
Absolutely.
And be a victor, not a victim. And what I find in this culture, what's happening right now, is it's so easy and so tempting to look to somebody else for whatever reason you're not being able to get what you think you should get. It's my teacher's fault, it's my parents' fault, it's my friend's fault, it was the weather's fault. It's like, okay, there might be valid reasons for all those sorts of things,
sure.
But have you done everything you possibly can to improve your own life, to wake up earlier, to create a better regimen of discipline, to, hey, maybe not go out and do drugs and drink with your friends,
sure.
Which, I talk to young Christians all the time, and, some of them say, well, Charlie, it's really hard not to go out with my friends. I said, of course
sure.
That's hard. I mean, it's hard to do the correct thing. But the two words that are not taught to young people enough is discipline and responsibility. And those are the two things that will really give you fulfillment in this world. And of course, it's more difficult to go that path.
Absolutely. As you travel around and you're teaching to high school students and college students, what do you personally think is the biggest challenge that faces them as they transition from high school into college in the world?
Well, yeah, I mean, generally, high school to college, there's this lie that is taught to our generation. I'm only 26. I'm only a couple years away from you guys. That indulgence will give you happiness. And this is nonsense. That somehow you having the capacity to do whatever you want to put into your body and watch the horrible things on the internet that far too many people are engaging in, that are slave to, whether it be pornography or bad communications or indulging in gossip on any sort of social media channels, that somehow that's gonna bring you happiness, when in reality it's the exact opposite. I find that students and young people have high levels of anxiety over, well, someone didn't like my Instagram post enough, or someone didn't like my Facebook post. And I'm not discounting that feeling, but have you ever considered just deleting Instagram? Like I did. I mean, I have an Instagram post that feed that my team manages. It is the most liberating thing you could possibly imagine. You don't need Instagram to succeed in life. You just don't. I mean, and guess what? Your value and your worth is not based on how many likes you get on an Instagram post. It means nothing, like absolutely nothing. Absolutely nothing. It's not about how many people compliment, a funny Snapchat that you send. It's not about it's not about whatever video you might make on TikTok, which I guess is the new thing with all you guys or something. I don't know. I'm so far behind the TikTok thing. What really matters is a couple things: your relationship with God and Jesus Christ, and the quality of the people you have around you, not the quantity. I graduated high school 7.5, 8 years ago. I talked to maybe 2 people from my high school, maybe. The amount of friends that you have in high school, as you get further and further away from it, you realize, wow, a lot of that stuff didn't matter. What really matters is, am I gonna get serious about my life decisions, and where do I derive that decision making from?
That's right.
And of course, it's the Bible, it's the church, it's great leaders like Landon. And so look, what I find, especially when you enter into college, it's so easy to want to get into into this really self-indulgent secular culture. And people, it's like, oh yeah, I'm being a rebel by doing drugs and drinking. Like, no, you're not. Like, you're not a rebel. You're a coward. Like, you want to be a rebel? Like, go to bed by 9 o'clock, wake up at 6 o'clock in the morning, work out, and don't do drugs for a month. That's being a rebel. That's something to be proud of.
Why the message you just said is so potent, and I love it. Why is that so universally not agreed with, what you just said?
Well, it's hard. That's why, you look at the Old Testament in particular, that's why God had to kind of lay down the gauntlet and give us 10 rules for life, the 10 Commandments. God had very strict teachings before the 10 Commandments, but he was kind of like knocking them on the head, being like, okay, how can I make this so unbelievably clear that you can't screw this up? And they still screwed it up, right? You will not have any gods before me. Okay. You will not take my name in vain. You will not lie. You will not covet what your neighbor has. And the commandment that every single person in this room should take very seriously, and I hesitate to say take one more seriously than the other, but it's hard to not take this commandment seriously and take the other seriously, is honor your mother and father. Now, mind you, it's not love your mother and father. The Bible tells us to love our neighbors. It tells us to love our strangers. Of course you should love your parents, but honor your mother and father. Now, I find it very difficult to honor our almighty God if you don't honor your earthly father and mother. Now, especially for teenagers out there, you might say, oh yeah, my parents are misguided and wrong. The older you get, the more you realize how correct your parents were when they put forth discipline towards you. And now, of course, you're gonna have quarrels, you're gonna have arguments, you're gonna have disagreements, but understand your parents truly have your best interests at heart. Of course, there's exceptions, and there's parents that are misguided and struggling with their own things, but large in part, the rule, not the exception to the rule, are parents that are so invested in your future and that are trying to look out for what actually will make you succeed in the future. But here's the bottom line, though, is that typically what is easy is not what is good for you. What is hard will benefit you in the future. A lot of people here say, yeah, I want to start a business. I want to be famous. I want to be a doctor. I want to be a lawyer. The way to do that is to do something that is hard, that is good for you for a long period of time. Do something that requires discipline, that will give you responsibility. If you want fulfillment in life, think about what really gives you fulfillment. Is it sipping beers with your friends or doing weed with your friends? That won't give you fulfillment, and you know that deep down. What gives you fulfillment is your family or something that you have to be accountable for. A sports team. If you don't show up, you're off the team. Showing up to your friends that really need you in times of crisis. Responsibility will give you meaning. Not the indulgent culture that is this secular lie that is pervasive in our culture.
You're a figurehead for this generation. A lot of people look to you as a leader of thought and a leader of faith. It's an amazing privilege that God has given to you. Talk to us about the potential that this next generation has. I feel like there's so much generational conflict right now with like the okay boomer humor, which I think is hilarious, but there's so much conflict between the generations. Talk to us about what this generation can do? What's the potential that they have?
And I believe in every single person in this room. I think our generation can be one of the greatest generations in American history. So, but let me tell you another one of the lies that all of you are taught. How many of you have those ridiculous self-esteem posters in your high school that you're perfect the way you are? I mean, when I grew up, I had these smiley faces, posters like "you're great" and "feel great about yourself," and you know, you're just on your way. And I mean, if that was the truth, then why are we in school? You know, why are we going to church? Why are we trying to improve ourselves? So if you believe in Christianity and you accept Jesus Christ as your Lord and Savior, you actually admit you're nothing. You are a particle of dust in the eyes of God, and we need Jesus Christ. It's an acceptance of our brokenness, that the ultimate sacrifice, that God came down and walked among us sinful dwellers that have been disobeying his commandments for thousands of years. And so I think that our generation, the key to our success will be a revival of the Christian ethic and the revival of Jesus Christ, but that only happens when we admit we don't have the answers, that it's only the gospel of Jesus Christ and the teachings of the Bible that will give us fulfillment and everlasting life. That will make our generation one of the most successful, if not the greatest in American history.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I just want to let those words sink in for just a second. There's something really powerful about not believing in your individual potential, but believing in the corporate potential of this Christian generation. And I love that message so much. And just as a final question, you speak to people all the time. You're on the news all the time, and you're getting asked questions all the time. But you're here right now, and you can say one more thing to this group of people that's so excited to have you here. Thank you so much for being here. Now, what would you say as your final parting words to them?
Surrender yourself to Jesus. And so that's a cliche, right? And people say that. What does that mean? You have to admit to yourself and to others, publicly and privately, that there was a gift given to you, and you have to accept that gift and understand that you will screw up, that you are not the most important thing in the world. And once you do that, your mind will be renewed and your spirit will be renewed. And I wish I would have taken that as seriously as I do today when I was 16 or 17 years old. I wish when I was 16 or 17, I would have said, you know what? There is a sovereign God. There's a gift that's been given to us. He came and bled and died for us as something that is so unbelievably divine for every individual, because we're all sinful, we're all broken, we're all engaging in a broken world, and each one of you have an opportunity to accept that, and the positives that will come from that is absolutely extraordinary.
That is awesome. I love that word, surrender. Thank you for that word. So right now, as we transition back into worship, I'm going to pray. But before I pray, can we just show Charlie a lot of thanks for being here and joining us? Thank you so much. Thank you so much.